fighting. I'd love to get a blindfold for one of them, and I said, blindfold them, take different meat out, like chicken, pork, whatever you sort of put in front of you. And I would love to say, well, do you know what that one is? Or do you know what that one is? Just to make them understand that it's not easy.
Sky News can reveal that almost 500,000 people have been cut out of the care system in 5 years.